Tony D with a late night reaction of Trump's speech at the RNC, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I wanted to give my reaction before anybody else. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books, links in the description. Comedy Heart in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 14, available at Amazon.com. Kindle Unlimited is free. Okay, sorry, I'm a little punchy. Got up early today. So Trump's speech was very different. His energy was different. It was very deliberate, and it was very laid back. I think I would say, if I had to guess, number one, he's a little bit tired because of the events of the past few days. Even for him, that was a lot, right? And he's got to be thinking and making moves, and everybody's worried about him. And it had to be stressful. It had to be stressful on him. So I think what he tried to do in the speech tonight was to say to himself, I need to do this off the cuff, but I need to make sure it's like a perfect speech. This was an important speech for him, because this is like the first speech. He did make a statement after the attempt, but that wasn't a speech. It was like a statement kind of thing. And for this, though, first he had to sit through a lot of speeches. I mean, he sat through a lot. The RNC, there's just a lot of people. I mean, after a while, it gets a little boring. But Hulk Hogan was huge. I mean, I said on Twitter, if the Biden administration was a return to the 70s, Trump is going to be a return to the 80s. So I feel like we're going back in time and then now going forward in time again, which is great. I look forward to revisiting the 80s, and definitely Hulk Hogan is very 80s. But he was very, very subdued in the beginning, very, very almost soft-spoken, and telling the story of what happened. It didn't feel at all like he was milking it, and I think maybe that's what he wanted to avoid. Like he didn't want it to seem like he was exploiting what had happened. And then the moment where he had the firefighter's gear and then walked over and sort of kissed the helmet, felt very it felt kind of heartfelt from him. Like, I think he feels really bad that this happened. I don't think he feels responsible. Obviously he's not, but I can only imagine how I would feel if something like that happened at an event, at a rally. I was, if I was in a situation, I'd feel awful that someone got hurt, or, in this case, deleted. It's awful. It's awful. And so I think he had to be very, very respectful and deliberate going up to that. And I was surprised he did it. Like, it was all the way across the stage, and then he just stops and goes over there, and then he came back and continued with the speech. And then you're kind of waiting for him to like kick it up back to normal Trump levels, and he kind of doesn't really. He comes up a little, but keeps it still very subdued, almost like, he's standing in the room with you, kind of just saying, well, this is the way it is. And so it was a very interesting Trump. Didn't feel like Trump like trying to sell you. It just felt like, here we are. Here we are. I mean, there's nothing to sell. There's nothing to sell at this point. If you're watching the RNC and you're not voting for Trump, it's, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know who at this point would watch the RNC and not vote for Trump. The people who aren't voting for Trump, a great many of them, I shouldn't say all, some people will just not vote, but the people who are, angry at Trump, I'll say, they couldn't sit through the RNC convention. They literally couldn't physically do it. And they certainly couldn't sit through an entire Trump speech. They wouldn't be paying attention anyway. They'd be too busy screaming at the screen. So it felt very much like, a guy in the room standing across the room saying, yeah, this is the way it is. We're going to have to do this. So that was very interesting to me. A different Trump. It was a different Trump. Very controlled, very deliberate. And so I think possibly this incident has impacted him in some way. Now he's maybe moved into a kind of mode where he is like the wise one, maybe, the one who's going to be laying down the wisdom, why a guy like J.D. Vance is going to be picking it up, hopefully. James Lindsay still worried about J.D. Vance and some of his rhetoric. I don't know. I think we have to give him a chance at least. I don't really think we have much of a choice but to give him a chance at this point. And 2028 is a long way away, and there's a lot of contenders for 28. Typically, VPs, a lot of times they don't move into the presidential slot. I mean, H.W. Bush did, but that was kind of, I think that was more unusual, But I think if J.D. Vance wants to move into the presidential position, he's going to be trying to prove himself over the next 4 years, and especially the second half of the Trump term. So we're going to get to see the sort of things he's going to push. And if he pushes too hard on something, it could be a problem for him. I don't know if he is. I mean, what he said in his speech that Lindsay pointed out, I thought, yeah, he might have meant it that way, but he also might have just been saying words, as politicians do. He also called Trump nasty names and didn't like him. So he's not doing that anymore. So I'm not convinced of anything yet with regard to him, other than he could spend 4 years being in the background, and he could also run in 2028 and lose to DeSantis. DeSantis could roll up and take over. He could just beat him. DeSantis did mildly okay. I don't see J.D. Vance completely adopting the Trump persona, which is what won him the primaries. Trump, if Trump is anything, he's amazing at the primaries. He's amazing in the primaries because he's got so many people to insult. He just knocks them out one after another. On one-on-one, he can do the same thing, but it doesn't, like when he's going after all the primary rivals, it's like 5 against 1, basically. Like he goes after them all, and that's kind of spectacular. Whereas when he's just going after one person, it's not as spectacular. Like, it wasn't as spectacular in 2020 during the debate. It was kind of during Hillary, just because Trump was relatively new in that arena. That and Hillary just wasn't expecting it. Whereas Biden, for all his terribleness, was kind of prepared in 2020. He kind of had a tack that worked. So this time, I mean, forget it. Trump's sort of new delivery is much more controlled. And maybe that's just because he's getting older. Maybe it's just because he doesn't need to expend all this energy showing off. You know? He's proven his case. Now I think he's trying to prove to a wider audience that he is more presidential, which was a major complaint for the people who didn't vote for him, but they couldn't look past his antics to see his policies. I know a lot of my older relatives, they just can't stand the way he acts. And so I think maybe this is a course correction for that, partly. And because this was a big night, everybody was going to be watching. He wanted to show that, hey, I can do this. I can look like a guy who's serious. And I think for the most part he was. You know, he made a couple of jokes, but he wasn't out of control Trump. He was nice and subdued Trump. Not low, you could say low energy, but I don't think it was low energy. Because certainly Biden could not have done this. And maybe partly it was to also show that he could talk this long on a train of thought that was totally coherent. So it's going to be interesting. And it also may be that he's still a little shell-shocked by Saturday's events, and he's still kind of recovering from it. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see if a few weeks from now he's on the campaign trail somewhere and he does one of his crazy speeches again, you know, and is just right back into form. But good on him. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good show. The RNC convention in general. I saw that Jeremy from the Quartering left early because he said there were some people on the floor of the convention that were a little disrespectful and during the prayer, and so he was complaining about that. I don't know. We really couldn't see that watch it on TV. I didn't watch that much of it, but at the end of the day, I don't think that matters a whole lot. But I get why he would be a little pissed off. I mean, it is the RNC. You would think they'd have their S more together than the Democrats, but I think by comparison they probably do. So yeah, pretty good speech. Look forward to this long national nightmare of Joe Biden to be over. I'll tell you, the next few weeks though, the action's going to be all on the Democrats' self-implosion, which is going to be really fascinating to watch. So I think Trump's just saving his energy. There's no reason to expend it at this point. He's ahead in like every poll. Might as well relax. Quite frankly, I don't think he needs to do that as many rallies as he did, although he can't let the pressure off. Yeah, so it was a good speech. Anyhow, that's my opinion, and that's it for me. Tony D, Little Jones, somewhere in the background. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.